So I wanted to share where we're at right now and kind of what the next step is. So one of the main things, I really wish I would have recorded the repair in the process. I didn't, but live and learn. So in this fender, I need to block this area. I have a feather fill on this area because there was a few little slight waves, and I didn't think it was anything too bad, but I was going to block it and see where I was. So as I blocked center of the area, there was a high spot right in this area. You could hold a straight edge up here and it would teeter on that high spot. I thought, well, okay, you have a couple options. You could just mud it, but then you're building up, extra thickness you don't really need, or you can do metal work. But metal work could be more time consuming, and you never know what kind of can of worms you might open. But I try to get the metal as close as I can before I put filler. So I decided to go ahead and do the metal work route. So there wasn't like an obvious dent, but there was a high spot. So I decided that I need to shrink the metal. The way I did it was, I've seen videos of people doing it this way, and some of them, they make it seem like it's the world's worst way to do it. Some people love the way you do it. This is the easiest way I had to do it, so that's what I did. All right, so here is a quick view of the tool I used. It is a Motor Guard Magna Spot 1500. Again, it's a stud welder, shrinker. I mean, it does quite a bit of stuff, and it does work really well. So the way I did it was I used a stud welder kit. It's got different tips, change them out. You can weld the pins and pull dents. It's also got this shrinking tip. So when I went through here, I would hold the straight edge up here, and I would see where it was teetering. And you basically just come up here and you push it down, and I pull the trigger for about a second, let off. What it does is it makes, you see these dark spots, it makes little hot spots, and then you take your hammer and you would kind of hit and glance toward that spot. And what it does is it kind of pushes the metal toward that hot spot, and then when it cools, it kind of tightens the metal up and can also take out some of the shrink. Or I apologize, some of the stretch. When you shrink though, it does create slight low spots. And with those low spots, if you go too crazy, you can make a big headache for yourself. But if it's just barely low, you can feel a low, but you can't feel a high spot. So if I could get rid of this high ridge, then that allows me to get, feel any slight imperfections, get it nice and straight. So now this area is nice and flat all the way up. Again, it was kind of a gamble. I wasn't 100% sure the best way to fix it, but I knew it needed to get shrunk down just a little bit. Again, it does leave a little bit of a dip, but I mean, we're talking like a 32nd of an inch. I mean, primer, if you didn't, a couple priming blocks could take that out, but now it's so much better than it was. So now this, I know for sure I can move into the next step. All right, so I got the epoxy on the fender. I sealed off the bare metal. There's a few little divots from where the stud welder does leave a little pit sometimes, so I clean those up really good. The epoxy will help seal the metal inside those pits, and it also gives the filler something to bond to. I'm not against doing filler off of epoxy, or so bare metal or epoxy doesn't really necessarily bother me either way. A lot of people say you can just wipe right over epoxy and it chemically bonds. I personally like to scuff it just a little bit. I'm not trying to sand it off, just kind of rough up the surface a little bit, just give it some tooth to bite to. One thing to remember is epoxy does not sand well. It's not really meant to be sanded anyways, so it's gonna clog your paper up. If you're gonna do it this way, you gotta be careful. But if it clogs up and you get a really big chunk, sometimes it can make a really deep scratch. You can see all these little hard chunks of epoxy that are building up. But if you'll brush your paper, it will come back off. Again, preps everything. So to me, I'd rather know I have something good for the filler to bond to than just smack it on there and hope it sticks. So like I said, extra few minutes of work. I didn't cut through anywhere. I just scuffed it up really good. And now I'm ready to go for the next step. I can't say that one thing I've never claimed to be is a professional at wiping this stuff. It always looks bad. But you're gonna sand it, so I mean at the end of the day I guess it works out. But when I do it, it never looks very pretty. Actually, this looks better than normal, so I'll take it. But anyways, it's not a very thick layer. I am gonna clean this edge up a little bit more. I'm gonna take this paper off, but as you can see, I got a thin coat wiped on it, and once that sets up good, we'll block it and see what it looks like.